Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Sons of Blood and Thunder are starting to get arrested. This is Jaira Golden. Welcome to another video. By now, we are all aware of the story, the unfortunate passing of Mr. Caleb Wilson. He was a junior at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The young man seemed to have a promising future, bright future ahead of him, and was online, as they say. He was pledging, one of the pledges for the Omega Psi Phi fraternity for that chapter there at Southern University, when an unfortunate punching incident would take his life. The man that was charged and being held responsible, he has since posted bail, but he's being held responsible for this. His name is also Caleb, but his name is Caleb McRae. Obviously a member of Omega Psi Phi and a graduate of Southern University. According to reports, as you all are aware of by now, the pledges, pretty much the pledges were lined up, and they were each punched several times. The report is saying 4 times. Don't know if it was more, don't know if it was less, but there were 4 blows to Caleb Wilson, and he collapsed. The end result, obviously, it ended up him being unalived. His brothers did take him to the emergency room to get medical attention. Before doing so, they took him out of his pledge gear, right? Put him back in regular clothes. They arrived with the injured Caleb Wilson, no shirt, black sweats, and socks. That's all he was wearing, according to the hospital staff who tried to administer help to that young man. And because obviously the stories didn't add up or didn't make sense in terms of what his injuries were and for what was reported to the medical team, authorities were called in. Sure, it didn't help that they didn't stick around after they told this story. They didn't stick around because they knew what was coming next. They knew the authorities would end up being called, and they had to go and report back to whoever was in charge that night. Because I would suspect you have the pledges there, then you have the big brothers there, and then you probably have some veterans on hand as well, maybe 1 or 2 or what have you. This all took place at a warehouse there in Baton Rouge. And as you would suspect, like, okay, well, that time of night, how would they just get access to a warehouse? The warehouse or the business actually was managed and or owned by an Omega Psi Phi member whose son was ultimately arrested. One of the people arrested to date, Mr. Smith, Isaiah Smith, he was arrested as well for hazing. Now, I don't know for sure what kind of time the other guys are facing, but the main culprit, whose name is Caleb McRae, who is the person responsible for the fatal blows to Mr. Wilson, he's facing up to 40 years in prison. That is a lot of time to think about something that is just probably tradition, allegedly, because this is not the first time we've heard about hazing. This isn't the first, and it will not be the last time where we've heard that an hazing incident has gone too far, where the person possibly ends up with severe injuries and they end up in the hospital, or in this case, so much worse, the person actually passes away. And because this young man, Caleb Wilson, has passed away, this story has gotten national attention. Everybody is talking about it. But while everybody is talking about it, it's kind of disappointing I mean, Omega Psi Phi was mom. They were quiet in the beginning. And I'm not speaking in terms of the status quo letter or statement that any organization or person would make just to save face. They did that. Check. That was done. But I'm speaking in terms of the think pieces, all of the different, if you go on X/Twitter, Facebook, wherever, there's another one. But if you go onto any of these rooms and even TikTok, there was some lives on TikTok where they were talking about this situation. And ultimately, it got into the overall conversation related to the D9 organizations and hazing and the treatment and things like that. And you wouldn't believe the way these people, members, were actually just not necessarily defending the actions of Omega Psi Phi and this night, but just overall, just more or less just kind of, in my opinion, just kind of playing down the process, kind of playing down what hazing is. We all are aware, even though we didn't experience it, but we are aware. I have family members who are members of D9. And as I've said, wink, wink, very quiet, not saying too much, right? So in the grand scheme of things, the D9 are being very, very protective of each other right now. And I should say mainly of Omega Psi Phi, because they don't really have strong opinions. Oh, I love my organization. Oh, we didn't endure that. We didn't go through that. My organization would never do anything like that. This is really shocking to me. The hell it is. Knock it off. Knock it off. Rightfully so, more members of Omega Psi Phi who were present that night will be charged. The extent of their charge should be the extent of their involvement. So I'm not going to act like, oh no, everybody should be charged with manslaughter. Everybody should be facing 40 years. Absolutely not. The culprit, the person who's actually responsible for the blows that would cause Caleb Wilson to collapse, urinate on himself, and be taken to the hospital for medical attention, the person responsible for that should be the one facing the stiff charge, 40 years in prison. The others, if you're just responsible for the hazing, the charge that fits that, what suits that. For those who, there's a penalty for lying to authorities, meaning but again, they didn't wait around. Remember, they didn't wait around for the police that night when they took Mr. Wilson to the hospital. So they don't necessarily get charged for her telling the hospital one thing and then leaving. So you have to keep that in mind. That is where the line is actually drawn. Now, if authorities actually reached out to these individuals, because it takes no time to find out who was all online along with Caleb Wilson, when the authorities reach out and then you start, fabricating and making up a story, that's where things change. So it will be interesting to see who or if any of the other people that were present that night, if they're charged with anything more than just hazing, right? Meaning, are they charged with obstruction? Are they charged with, whatever you would call it? Are they going to be charged? If any of the other people are charged with lying to the police, the detectives, or anything like that. So I'll pay attention to that to actually see. But the one young man, Caleb McCray, is facing, if he is convicted, if he's brought to trial and convicted for manslaughter, he's facing 40 years in prison. I suspect he is not that dumb. He knows he's guilty. There's no point in dancing around, playing around with this. You are responsible. I will go on record and say I don't believe it was intentional. The intention for him in his head stopped with just the hazing part, just, punching the young man in the chest, because everything is good until it's not. And unfortunately, things were not good that night for this one individual, because the others that were on the first line of pledgees who were punched, nothing. So I don't know if Caleb Wilson was the first one on the second line to, because they split them up. You know what I mean? It wasn't just all 8 or 9 of you in a row. They split them up. According to reports now, they split them up. But however, whoever came before Caleb Wilson, they were okay. So that is to my point of saying everything is good until it's not. Caleb Wilson is the until it's not. And again, very, very unfortunate. Promising future. This young man was a mechanical engineering major, and appears to come from a good family and just a great, strong foundation. And people have had nothing but good things to say genuinely about him. And condolences to his family. He definitely deserves justice. The person that is responsible, Caleb McRae, is the person that is responsible, according to all of the reports and those who have been arrested so far. It has been reported that he is the one that struck those, that threw those fatal blows. He caused that. So he should be held accountable and will be held accountable. But again, I'm not one of those people who, I know everybody's like, well, they were all there, so they should all be charged for doing that to him. Well, everybody didn't do it. You were present. The part that you played in this, that's what you should be charged with. That could mean 6 months in prison. That could mean a year in prison. That could mean some other type punishment. But the person that's actually responsible, yeah, it's a long road ahead for you. And like I said, very, very, very disappointing to see so many different members from varying D9 organizations not really take a stance. They don't really have a position outside of, our organization would do that. This is unheard of. This isn't even the norm. Again, the hell it isn't. Yes, it is. And we, for many, many, many years, we've all known about it, heard about it, haven't experienced it because we're on the outside looking in. But just from the people we know, and for the few people, Caleb Wilson's incident aside, for the few people who have denounced for their own personal reasons, but they've denounced from their own organization for their reasons. But even for you, when you're listening to those stories, the people, they didn't denounce for positive reasons, right? So going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, who else will be brought in. But what I'm looking for, I want to see if any staff, any people who are part of the Baton Rouge administration were there that night. Do you know what I mean? Because I've always said it's dangerous to have other kids, quote unquote, to be responsible for the pledge process. So I would think that there has to be some veterans, you know what I mean? Some members of the organization who put in some years. They've paid their dues to kind of oversee, take a step back. But I'm pretty much, I don't know, chaperone is not the right word, but that is the first word that comes to mind. So the point being, I'm curious to see if some members of Omega Psi Phi are actually part of the administration at Southern University. So it hasn't been implied, but that was just one of the things that came to mind when I was looking into this story and just, sitting back, listening to the think pieces and hearing the opinions and, the public's, we're up in arm, and the D9 members are, some of them are, the D9 members are, some of them are, upset. Many of them like, oh, I don't agree with this. But at the same time, of some of those people saying they don't agree with it, they're not, I don't know. It's just like they feel how they feel. So I don't want to say, oh, you're not mad enough. But he's like, yeah, you're not mad enough. You should be, I don't know, you should feel something else, but I can't explain it, but it just wasn't there overall. The consensus I walked away with many times, from just bouncing from room to room to room, the consensus I got was pretty much a dismissive tone. Yeah, dismissive. Oh, I'm sorry this happened to him, but, oh, I'm sorry this happened to him. However, you know what I mean? That kind of tone. But what do you think? What was your takeaway? Most people, as I said, us in the public, obviously did not agree with it. And we had strong opinions. We still have strong opinions. And we're glad to see that these members of Omega Psi Phi are being brought to justice slowly but surely. What are your thoughts? Because this is a very, very sad situation. It has happened many times in the past, and it has been reported. This is one of the few times I can think of where someone actually succumbed to their injuries, right? While being hazed or being online, that I know of. Sure, I'm sure everybody, again, we know different people. We have different experiences or privy to someone else's experience, but this is the first one that I can think of where someone actually passed away that I can think of in my time. So curious to know your thoughts. And members of Omega Psi Phi, if you care to comment down below, good, bad, indifferent, please be sure to do that. I read all comments, love engaging with everybody. My opinion is not the end all above all. So please be sure to comment down below. Thanks so much for stopping by. And remember, friendship is essential to the soul. Take care.